Participation, what is it all about? Let's explore it some more. When we begin to think about participation, there are some key bits of information that we need to have, which embeds everything that we're striving to do. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child contains 54 articles in the convention. 42 are directly about children and young people, and 12 are about how governments should implement them. There are 4 main principles in the UNCRC. The first one, non-discrimination, contained in Article 2. All rights are guaranteed by the UNCRC must be available to all children without discrimination of any kind. The second one is the best interests of the child, Article 3. The best interests of the child must be primary. The third one is the right to life, survival and development, contained in Article 6. And every child has the right to life, survival and development. And then the fourth principle is the views of the child. Article 12 says every child has the right to be involved in making decisions, planning, reviewing any action that might affect them. There are also 3 main themes of children's rights. They're sometimes called the 3 Ps. So provision, protection and participation. So provision. These articles cover the basic rights of children and young people to survive and develop. They range from healthcare, food, clean water, education and environment, which allows children to develop. And the UNCRC is clear that the best place for a child is normally within their family, and that the government has a duty to support and assist parents. And then we move on to protection. Protection, these articles deal with the exploitation of children and young people at work, the physical, sexual and psychological abuse and discrimination and any other mistreatment, which many still suffer, including in the UK. And the UNCRC asks governments to protect children and young people and, where necessary, to provide rehabilitation for them. And the third one is participation. These articles are based on the idea that children and young people are actively contributing to society as citizens in the here and now, not just as someone on the receiving end of good or bad treatment from others. Article 12 says this: all children have the right to have their voices heard and be listened to. In Wales, we were the first country in the UK to become a rights respecting country. And when this legislation came into being, children's rights were enshrined in Welsh law under the Rights of Children and Young Persons Wales Measure 2011, underlining Wales's commitment to children's rights and the UNCRC. And this has led to a raft of other legislation, including us being the first country to have a Future Generations Commissioner. This piece of legislation was called the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. When we're thinking about participation, we want to explore what a child thinks about a subject and gather information to use in developing our thinking in everything that we do in church. This is as true for whole denominational decisions as well as decisions we can make in local churches. An example of this would be the Eco Church questionnaire, which we have developed for churches to use alongside their Arosha Eco Church questionnaire. This enables churches to know what children think about the things that we're doing to help our environment, and is something that they're used to doing in schools. But how can we really explore what children of all ages think on a variety of subjects, from the way our buildings look to what they think about inclusive worship. We need to explore their space, entering into the world of the child and allowing them to share their views with us. Using a mosaic type of approach, children and adults who want to gather information, working together to affect change that is best for all. And in using that approach, we are seeking to do several things. Knowledge creation, not simply just extracting local knowledge, which we already know. Encouraging children to construct knowledge for themselves. It is a visual way of listening to and to explore what they mean and what they know. Local knowledge is where we explore the information that children and parents already have about their own environment and space. They are experts in their own world, and this needs to be included in any participation exercise. And then the material world, the world that children occupy. It's a world of everyday tasks such as meeting friends, having snacks, playing on their bikes. It's the world of glue and toilet paper and sand. And research methods should include these things rather than exclude them. The information about children's material or physical world can hold some valuable insights for us. Children are their own experts in their own lives. They are skillful communicators, and we need to learn how to listen carefully to them, exploring what they're saying. And when they take a picture of something, asking them what's wrong with it when they disagree with us, enabling them to explain why they disagree. For example, the walls might be the wrong shade of colour or the wrong texture. The chair might be in the wrong place because that's a space where they play with their cars. Children should be active participants in the research we are undertaking. And how do we allow children to explore that question that we want to ask? Are we ready to explore what they're sharing with us? What are the children's observations? Enabling children to work with us in collaboration, helping them to develop their thoughts instead of having preformed ideas about what they may say. Creating some knowledge production about the world of a child as they see it. And we can do this by having them create photos of their space, drawing what they want to happen, creating pictures or models about the space, instead of just doing knowledge gathering, which is interviewing and surveys and checklists. It is not about the end point. It is about the collaborative process with the children. And this changes the emphasis from action and change to collaborative research activities, which feels a bit more like a two-way process and not something which is imposed with very little opportunity to adapt the outcome. How we hear the voices of children and enable them to express their opinions. Having a voice, having a choice. The Welsh Assembly Government has created a short statement to explain what they mean by this. Participation means that it is my right to be involved in making decisions, planning and reviewing an action that might affect me. Having a voice, having a choice. There are 8 standards which were agreed by the Welsh Assembly Government, the Participation Consortium, which is a group of organisations that want to make genuine participation happen, as well as children and young people in Wales. Other parts of the UK do have similar standards, which may vary depending on whether you live in England or Scotland. The Welsh National Children and Young People's Participation Standards are a tool to help you measure the process of children and young people's participation in the work that we do and how we can increase the participation of children and young people in the decision making in church or in your group. The standards in Wales are also underpinned by the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. And the Act puts involvement of children and young people, adults and communities at the heart of improving wellbeing. Each standard is a guide to good practice for anyone wanting to make more participation happen, and they are as follows. Information. Information that is easy to understand and get a hold of, and that workers are well informed. It's your choice. Children and young people can get involved and work on things that they find important, or they can opt out if they want to. No discrimination. No matter who the children or young people are, or their age or ability, they all have the same right to be involved. Respect. Children and young people's opinions are important and they should be respected. You will get something out of it. Children and young people should enjoy the experience of participating and getting the benefit from the process. Feedback. During and after the process, the participants are kept informed about their outcomes. And improving how we work. There is no perfect goal to be achieved. Every organisation needs to realise that they can improve. We want children to be able to express themselves freely and feel that it is their choice to be involved or not. Your choice, your voice. There are various models which may help or hinder us when we're thinking about participation and how children express themselves in decision making. So whether you are building a solid culture where participation is an obvious daily occurrence, or considering the different participation experiences, the different allocations of power to the adults and the children taking part, trying to avoid the hierarchy of importance, or avoiding tokenism or imitation participation, which is like ticking a box without taking any notice of the contents. Because this can result in children feeling patronised and ultimately fail to get a positive experience. They may be lost to the process of participation in the longer term. However, to make any participation strong and sustainable, those taking part need to firstly have the information. This leads to better consultation. And secondly, be consulted, and that will lead to greater ownership. Poorly organised experiences can put everyone off participating in the future. Participation without feedback, without results, and without some positive reward may be doing the opposite of its primary aim and can disempower rather than empower the participants. It is something that we need to avoid, especially in the early stages and years, if we are to empower and challenge children and young people to be active involvement in our churches. If participation is about making your preference known, then babies can participate before they can even understand the concepts involved. Any parent will recognise how their child shows them what food they like and their spectacularly messy methods of rejecting what they don't like. However, it's understanding the concepts involved in participation, the process, the information that helps to make a consultation real and leading to a more genuine consultation process and richer participation. Measuring the effectiveness of participation includes looking at what the participant did, what effect it had, how they felt about their action. And one important way to measure a participation is by asking, was the experience a positive one? Or perhaps, would you do something like that again? Poor participation is rarely a conspiracy to keep children unseen and unheard. More often, it is a lack of clear thinking, understanding and planning. When you don't get it quite right, the best way to improve is by asking the children to help you make it better while you're working with them. So 5 top tips might be, firstly, be clear about why you want children and young people to participate. Secondly, if the children and young people are involved from the planning stages, it will usually work better. Thirdly, start with a participative process at the design and planning stages. Fourthly, monitor and reflect as your project develops. And fifthly, review together. Participation is a meaningful process that we should all be carrying out if children's rights and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child are ever going to be more than ageing, useless pieces of paper. Children are experts in their own lives. If we want to know what a 2-year-old thinks and wants, we need to spend time with them and get to know them. There are various ways to do this, and one would be using a mosaic type approach, which pieces together an image of that child and their environment. This may be better described as a kaleidoscope, which is a constantly changing image. It's not simply a 2D picture which forms. It becomes a 3D image made up of a combination of ideas, drawings, images, models, textures, sounds, like creating a patchwork of ideas. And this creates a catalyst for further discussion, and it can also lead to further reviewing of the information. One thing we need to be careful about is, what is the question we want to ask of the children? Keep it simple. Like, what does it mean to be in this space? Tuning into the minute details of what a child may mean when it can make an enormous difference. For example, why this photo? What does it mean to that child? So we need to consider some of the following things. Communication in all forms of body language, recognising that children are skillful communicators. So we need to make ourselves vulnerable to that communication with them. We need to change our way of communicating. Observing and exploring through a child's eyes. Asking the child to show them through play what they think is important to them. Listen to them, how they respond to activities and what their body language tells us. And this is best done through positive relationships and skilled practitioners. And play is central to a child's life. They can express their preferences through play. A good example of this was a 20 mile per hour zone consultation that was undertaken in Wales. And this was informed through play in many settings, particularly in nursery settings, where children explained through play with cars why slowing down was important to them. If we use some resources which are already produced to gauge what the children think about bigger issues, bigger social justice issues, we can go to resources like Go with Greta to begin to inform and establish the process. And it may need adapting for use with very young children, but It can help us to be informed as adults, informing clear and simple questions. And remember that there are practitioners in your synod, especially the children and youth development officers and their equivalents, as well as the Children and Youth Office, who can help you in forming any consultation and participation activity in your church. We want to offer an opportunity for children to participate and to experience real engaging participation where their voice is genuinely heard. If we ask people, and that includes children, what they think about how things should be, we're more likely to get it right for more people. If we ask them what they thought about the changes that have happened and the way they happened, we are more likely to get it right next time. We also need to get the preparation work done right. And here are a few pointers about making the process useful and worthwhile. Give information. Before you start a consultation, you should provide your group with information for the following reason. It's very hard to comment on something that you know nothing about. Giving some simple background information, including the reason why you're asking for their views, means that you're more likely to get useful answers. You also need to tell them what will happen with any of the information you gather. Remind the group that you want to hear from them. It may be that you want to consult very informally on a regular basis rather than running a specific session. It's still important to remind them that you want to hear what they think about things, and if anything has changed because of what they or their peers have suggested. Think carefully about your questions. What exactly do you need or want to find out? Don't be afraid to ask the same question in different ways in order to get more depth of understanding or to check if the responses are consistent. Gather your information through observation. Sometimes information you need will arrive very informally, observing which toys do or don't get used, where the hangout spots are, noticing the energy levels in the room. What you want to find out should be relevant to the children. If it's not, they won't be interested, and the information you get will most likely be useless. Past experiences and future dreams are one thing. Asking them about what the men's group should have at their annual dinner is another. Use warm-ups. Use activities initially will get everybody's brain oiled and introduce the topics that you'd like to ask them about. For example, by doing picture bingo. You can still start to collect information at this stage, but the main point is they're not starting from scratch once you get into the meatier activities. Remember, no one has to participate. Respect that fact. As with participation in general, some children may not want to join in. It should be their choice whether they want to have their voices heard. And using playful methods may encourage them to share their thoughts. But for some, a suggestion box or being able to approach you quietly may work better. It's your job to make those options available. Avoid false promises or assumptions. Be clear from the start that consultation doesn't mean that everybody will get exactly what they do or don't want. For one thing, there have to be realistic parameters. If you have a small pot of funding and a very small space to work in, it's unlikely that to build a world's biggest roller coaster is going to happen. And it's fairly unlikely too that all the children in your group will want the same thing. And that's without considering anybody else that the results might affect. Members of the congregation for a start. Don't be afraid to say to the children that they won't always get what they've asked for, but make sure that you explain why the answer would be no. Discussing these things in a group, but but also reminding them that everyone's views will be carefully considered and that they may well be able to take part in the final say and even in the actual changes. But consider why a child may ask for a roller coaster. It may be that they're actually saying they want more fun or play in that space. All ideas are sacred. Don't dismiss ideas just because they seem too unlikely or ridiculous at first glance. They may suddenly seem possible when you look more closely, or at least they may be a good starting point for something that is slightly reined in. A consultation that was carried out in the past suggested that the best way to combat bullying or unwanted playground behaviour was to arm lunchtime supervisors on the roof of the school overlooking the yard. This, of course, was entirely unrealistic, but what did come out of it was an understanding of how the lunchtime staff in the school were viewed, and that it was useful to train lunchtime supervisors in subjects like playground games and mediation skills so that they could enhance the respect that they already had. And lastly, check that you understand. Be aware of your own agendas and jumping to conclusions early on. Check that you understand exactly what it is that the children are suggesting, requesting, or feeding back. So by offering choice and variety to children in all aspects of participation consultation, providing a variety of ways for them to be able to truly express their views, encouraging everybody to make any activity accessible to the whole group, listening to the voice of the newborn and the non-verbal children through body language and choice. You may not be able to understand me, but talk about what I want, I need. I need you to speak to others that care for me and talk about me. Get to know who I am. Drawing things that they like to play with. Photograph the places that they like to play in, or the things that they like to play with. Observe their play both indoors and outdoors over 5 minutes. All of these can create a more detailed view of the child in their own environment. We can use a variety of techniques and tools. Asking the children to show you around their space using photos, noting what the weather is too. Seeing things through their eyes and what they think about their space. When they take pictures of carpeted spaces, and they maybe call it the scratchy carpet, think about what it's like for that child to sit for a time on a scratchy carpet. As adults, we may never have thought about it. They may take pictures of names or things to do with them, pegs in the nursery, for example. This has a lot to do with a child's sense of belonging in that place and their well-being generally. Revisiting the exercise with the children and by looking over the photographs over a period of time helps you to slow down the decision making, but means that we get it right for the children. Depending on your research question, you may want to do block play or other forms of play with children. Remember, it's important to keep in mind what we are wanting from this exercise. What is your role as an adult? Are the children sharing their experiences with you? And what are you going to do with that information? It may be that you don't have access to children to fully consult with them. And there are ways which this can be done through experimental approaches to bring in a new perspective. Considering the child at the centre of everything that we do. What does this child feel and think about this? Recognising that this can be a bit flawed, as we can attribute thoughts or feelings to particularly a baby or a non-verbal child, thoughts and feelings that they have not articulated. Pen portraits can put a child in the centre of all decisions we make, enabling adults to continually remember the child in the centre of any decisions. This isn't participation, but it does keep the focus on the child when we are making decisions. Considering a question which we would like an answer to, like, what makes me happy? When do I feel loved? Or do I feel included in worship? When considering any question, think of a child that you know today. It may be a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, a child who lives next to you, a child who goes to your church. Then answer the question as if it was them, in 1 or 2 words. This brings the child into a room and helps us to think from their point of view. Reviewing this information and reflecting on it can inform our decision making. We can all make excuses why we don't listen to the voices of the children, and it's useful to have considered those excuses and have some responses to them. Here is a list of a few that we've heard and a few suggested responses. Under 11s are too immature. It's our job to make it appropriate. They don't know what they want. We can show them ideas and examples to get them started. They are unrealistic. We can explain realistic parameters, and even unrealistic ideas can be adapted to fit reality. But it's good to have someone think outside our normal boundaries. They don't want to. They don't have to. But they should be offered a chance to know what it really involves. They're not interested and they'll find it boring. We can make it relevant and consequently interesting. They just need to play and develop naturally, free from responsibility. We will not impose on their time too much, and we will respect the other things that they want in their lives. They don't understand. We can explain, illustrate, and check their understanding. They can't express themselves and do not have a grasp of the language or the concepts. We can use many ways for children to express themselves. They don't have the attention span. Well, we can keep it snappy. They are not competent. We can train and support them. They're easily led by their peers. We can give them clear information about the importance of their views and build their self-esteem so that they can realise how important their views can be. They will just try and please adults. We will give them clear information about not having to please adults. They can't concentrate. We will use short and involving methods. Their thinking is too polarised, too black and white. It is okay to give simple responses. By the time anything happens, they'll have moved on. We will think of how to keep them in touch with the process as well as the final result. As we develop the participation experience of children and young people, it is worth remembering that even the smallest child has rights and a voice. We all have a part to play in supporting children's rights. The smallest change can make a big difference. What will you take away from the process of consultation and participation? There are a variety of resources which already can be used to share information and hear the voice of our children and young people. Some resources like Go with Greta, the Eco Church Questionnaire, Joint Public Issues Team, and how they may be used are endless. There are also a variety of tools and techniques which can be used, simple, easy activities to generate ideas, and some can be found in the Love Is resource book. You can also contact your Synod Children and Youth Development Officers or their equivalents and have access to their resources and their support and help. And there is also the Children and Youth Office who can help you and support you too.